able to present because he is traveling in train. So, can someone from our group present on behalf of him, or will he be presenting separately?
Was he a part in your preparation?
Uh, yes, ma'am. We allotted him a topic, and the slides are also ready for him. But we are not. He is not sure whether he will be able to attend this meeting or not. And he said exactly this, that he won't be able to attend the meeting.
Okay. So you do one thing, you just ask him whether he'll be able to join as the third team. Third team means like first team two will be presenting, then
No,
we
ma'am.
can ask if, yeah,
He won't be able to.
he
So,
won't be able.
ma'am, I'm seeking for the permission that whether someone from our group can present on behalf of him.
Not an issue, not an issue. You can ask him to present tomorrow. I mean, your team can present tomorrow. Is that okay? Because you have worked as a
Ma'am, we
team.
all are ready, ma'am. We all are ready for our presentation. So it will be better if someone from us can present on behalf of him.
Okay. Yeah, if it is okay for you, then it is fine for me. So I'll ask that particular candidate. Can you tell his name and roll number?
Ma'am, his roll number is 13. Aniket.
13.
Yes, ma'am.
What is his name? What is his name? His name,
Aniket Tomar Singh.
Aniket Tomar Singh. Okay.
Aniket Singh Tomar.
Oh, whatever. Yeah.
Okay. No, not an issue. Roll number 13, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you do one thing. Now, I'll make you as the last team for today's presentation. Is that fine? So you can take time, you can talk between your team members, and you can discuss and share his slides also.
Okay,
So
ma'am.
now, okay, now team two will be presenting. After that, team four will be presenting. After that, again, team three will be presenting. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. So your team can take a you can like jump out. You can have a discussion through call, and you can come back and join the meeting. Okay.
Ma'am, no
So
problem. No
yeah,
problem.
okay. Yeah, okay. Now you can start the formation of concrete. Sorry, formation of contract. Your team. You can start it.
Good evening, ma'am. Am I
Yeah.
audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
I am Aditya Kiran. We are from Group 2, and our topic is formation of contract. Let me give you the introduction part, followed by Anish, who will cover the process, and Rashid, who will cover an essential element in the formation of contract, that is consideration, and Amar, who will cover another important element, that is legality. And in the end, Aditya will mention all the major takeaways as a conclusion. Okay. Introduction. Indian Contract Act was enacted in 18 and came into force on 1st September in the same year. The law of contract is based on the principle agreements must be kept. The most common definition of a contract is a legally enforceable promise or agreement. In most circumstances, an enforceable agreement involves a set of mutual promises or a promise to do something in exchange for an agreed performance. As per section, every promise and every set of promises forming consideration for each other is called an agreement. It says that a contract is a legally binding document between at least two parties which defines the governs and rights and duties of a parties to an agreement. And it is also legally enforceable because it meets the requirements and also the approval of the law. And it also involves an exchange of goods, services, money, or promise, or any of those kind. Next topic is process, which will be explained by Anish.
Yeah, so before diving much into core process, there are some basic concepts which need to be understood. So the first question one could encounter is who can enter in contract. So the law states that the individual must have attained the age of majority, has sound mind, is qualified enough from contracting by law to which he is subject, competent enough to contract. So minors, person of unsound mind, and persons disqualified by law to which they subject cannot enter into a contract. Can we move to the next slide? The first thing that comes into picture in formation of contract is offer. And if someone shows willingness for it, it turns out into promise. There are some terminologies over here. here. Offer, that is proposal, which means will to do something. Offerer is someone who proposes the offer, and offeree is one to whom offer has been offered. Now, as we have seen how an offer turns into promise, one important element comes into scene, that is consideration. So now can we move to the next slide? So due to consideration, a contract gets different from a gift because a value gets associated with it. Or you can see consideration as something in return. Let's have a look at some examples. So Rohit purchases some goods worth 10,000 from shopkeeper and pays money to shopkeeper. Here, Rohit promises to give 10,000 rupees for consideration of goods and shopkeeper promises to give goods for consideration of 10,000 rupees. Let's have a look at another example. Manan promises to sell a new bike to Ayush, and Ayush accepts the offer and promises to pay 50,000 rupees for bike. In this case, Manan promises to sell a bike for consideration of 50,000 rupees, and Ayush promises to pay 50,000 for consideration of bike. Due to this consideration element, promise turns into agreement. Aman, can we go to next slide? Now we know that how an offer turns into promise and promise turns into an agreement. When an agreement is legally enforceable, it turns into contract. And those agreements which don't qualify this phase are called as void agreements. So all contracts are agreements because there must be some mutual understanding between two parties for a contract to get formed. But all agreements are not contract. This was the whole process of formation of contract in a glance. Now two important elements, that is consideration, which will be covered by Rashid in detail, and legality, which will be covered by Amar in detail. So over to Rashid now.
Okay, am I audible?
Yeah,
Hello.
you are.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rashid. So far we have seen that for a contract to form, there must be mutual agreement, and also there must be an offer made by one promiser, and the other party called promisee must accept the offer. Now, the other important parameter that needs to exist for formation of a contract is consideration. So what is consideration? Consideration is a vital element in the law of contract, and it is referred to something that has value in the eyes of law. It is essential reason for a party or an individual, for example, in a contract between a labor and a construction company, and on the other hand, construction manager expects to get some work by the labor. So both of these expectations uh, or goals are considerations of the contract. Next slide, please. Now, types of consideration. Consideration is usually payment in the form of money, but generally we can classify it as follows. It is a promise to do an act, for example, transfer ownership in a property, create an artwork, or completing a project. It can also be a promise to refrain from doing a certain, for example, not work with another employer or not take ownership of shares. And it can also be a promise to pay money to the other party or someone else. Next slide. So what if the consideration seems disproportionate? Courts rarely pass judgment on the value of the consideration exchange, unless the two promises are so disproportionate in the value that demonstrates bad faith or unconscionability in the bargaining process. So if the court does judge that the consideration is unfair, the contract will probably fall. But generally, courts don't want to get into judging relative value of particular promises or items. So it is up to contracting parties to consider the fairness or unfairness of consideration in the bargaining process itself. Next slide. Okay. Now, question rises that can a contract form without any consideration? So first, we must note that a contract without any consideration is looked upon with a lot of suspicion in construction contracts because it's not expected that a person or an institution do something for another institution without consideration, except some very specific cases which are also laid in law, some of which are as follows: natural love and affection, For example, we can say a contract between parents and their child can be without any consideration. Then a promise to compensate voluntary services or compliance of law, a promise to pay time-based debt, gift actually made, and also creating an agency. In case of construction contracts, a contract is void without consideration, and the court will not enforce a gratuitous agreement. Now, the discussion of legality of contracts over to Omar Kumar. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashid. Am I audible, ma'am? Ma'am, am I
Yeah,
audible?
you are. Yeah, you are. You are. You can proceed, Amar.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Here I am going to brief about one of the most important part of contract, that is legality. Without legality, we can't think of formation of contract. All agreements are contract if they are made by the free consent of parties. The agreement should be competent to contract. It should follow a lawful consideration with a lawful object and are not hereby expressly declared to be void. We will understand these four conditions shown in the table in detail. The first one is intention to create legal obligation and to follow legal consequences. When people enter into an agreement, or we can say enter into a contract more specifically, they are explicitly stating their willingness to create some legal obligation towards each other and to follow legal consequences. What to follow or what to not to follow to avoid bad consequences. The guidelines are provided and its intention should be very clear and understood by the people entering into the contract. The second condition is lawful object. The lawful object should not be forbidden by the law, and it should not defeat the provision of the law. It should not involve or imply injury to the property or a person. The court should not regard the contract as immoral, as the court do not frame laws. The court generally confines the parties to interpret what is a law prevailing at that point of time and at that particular place, what will be the best decision. The object should not oppose to public policy, and these are also interpreted by the courts. The third one is lawful gains. It helps to keep the contract fair, impartial, and transparent. It helps in the development of work. It also helps in the long run as it strengthens and improves the quality of services. It also protects us from exploitation. Now the last condition is void contract. If the contract is entered by incompetent parties or the contract is against the condition mentioned in lawful object, then the contract could be considered as void. Or if a contract can be voided if its acceptance is obtained without free and genuine consent. It is by coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, or by mistake. This should not be there in contract. And this is the part of the legality. And now I would request Aditya Ajit to conclude the formation of contract topic.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm here to explain the conclusion part. Next slide, please, Amar. In the formation of contract, the three main things are agreement, consideration, and intention to create legal relations. For a contract, first an offer is made, where offer is a promise to enter into a contract on certain terms. It must be specific, complete, capable of acceptance, and intended to be bounded by acceptance. It can be made into an individual or a group of persons. Then, after an The offer must be accepted to create a contract. It must be final and unqualified with no variation to the proposed terms. If opposite party makes any modification in the offer, then it is said to be a counter offer, which does not have the effect of making a binding contract. Then comes the consideration. Consideration is a benefit which must be bargained for between the parties and is essential reason for a party entering into a contract. Consideration must be of a value and is exchanged for the performance or promise of performance by the other party. Such performance itself is consideration. In a contract, one consideration is exchanged for another consideration. Acts which are illegal or immoral that they are against established public policy cannot serve as consideration for enforceable contract. Next slide, please. The Indian Contract Act defines contract as an agreement which is enforceable by law. Thus, legality becomes the most important element of a contract. One cannot enforce a contract which is unlawful. That is, the contract you made should not be forbidden by law or should not be defeat provisions of any law or should not imply injury to the person or property of another, or the court should not regard it as immoral or opposed to the public policy. By making a contract, parties are explicitly stating their willingness to create some legal obligation towards each other and to follow legal consequences that may arise due to following or not following the contract. Thus, legality is an essential element for a contract. At last, for a contract to be considered as valid, contract should have all the essential elements including offer, its communication, meeting of minds, acceptance, communication of acceptance, consideration, capacity, and legality. That's all. Thank you all. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Amar. Thank you, Ajit. So the thing is, you are only 4 in a team.
No, ma'am, we are fine.
Oh, ma'am.
You are 5. Okay, okay. Okay, the first thing was Aditya Kiran.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, now I'm clear. Okay. So I have certain remarks for this presentation. I'll once we complete the presentation, I'll give the remarks then and there. Then we can move on to the next team. Is that okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you can stop share the screen. Your presentation was a very good presentation. It was very cohesive, like all were in the logical manner. And what I wanted to tell you is, you have that is. I hope Amar have given the definition for void contract. It would be good if you explain more about void contract. In the previous class, we saw what is the fundamentals of contract, what is a contract actually, and we don't know what is a void contract. So that you just gave a definition. It would be good if you explain with some examples. What you can do is you can include an example for the void contract in a slide. You have given the definition for void contract, right? You can include an empty slide next to it. You can give a simple example of the students to understand what is called a void contract. Okay. And also, finally, after this presentation, you can include one more slide stating the difference between what is called a valid contract and what is called a void contract. So it will be easy for the students to compare what is valid and what is invalid contract. So it will be easy for them to compare and study. Only that I wanted to tell you. Otherwise, it was a very good presentation. So much of hard work by team 2 members.
Okay, ma'am, we will add that.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Now, shall we have team 4 here to present it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You can start sharing your screen.
Is it visible, ma'am?
Yeah, it is visible.
Okay. Hello everyone, I'm
You
Ayush. Yes, ma'am.
you're only 4 in a team.
Yeah, you're only four.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Hello everyone, I'm Ayush on behalf of Team 4, and we are here to present on the topic contract for labors. Let me start by explaining what is a labor contract. A labor contract is one which involves only the labor that is required for construction. In this type of contract, the source of construction material is undertaken by the owners. The responsibility of material producement lies within the homeowner in such type of contract. This type of contract, in this type of contract, high involvement is required from homeowners. Owner will be involved in every step of the construction process and can decide on the cost and quality of material used. The labor contract is a high involvement contract as the owner will be required to closely monitor and provide materials for the construction process. Owner also need to have understanding of best practice in construction so as to take care of buildings quality. Labor contracts are an important aspect of the workforce as many companies farm out portions of their workload to contractors which provide needed service. Labor contracts vary by individual company and specific responsibility, but all must consist some general guidelines that includes description of duties, the length of agreement, what type of payment will be made, and risk of contractors undertaking the project. Mm, Now let's overview some basic guidelines that should be in every labor contract. Obligations. Typically, the first information a labor contract details are duties expected to be met. All obligations from both parties must be described in great details. In language everyone involved can understand, one misspelled word or misinterpreted phrase can result in a job not being performed as desired, or a contractor's expectations fall to be met. Some labor contracts also consist of outs for either party, which should be well defined as well. Length of the contract. Labor contract must provide the amount of time in which a project is expected to be completed. The deal. Occasionally, labor contracts consist of more than one project and therefore must be consist of multiple time frames specified to each jobs. Payment for the contract. The amount of money that will be transferred from owner to the contractor is another vital aspect includes in labor contract. On top of how much labor contract must often indicate the day on which a payment will be made or days. In case of multiple payments, expenses of supplies and type of supplies that are to be purchased also must be detailed in labor contract, as should advance payment made to the contractor. Risk. Every labor contract needs a certain potential risk to the owner and contractor. Risk often includes potential injury, damage to a contractor's property, or the hazards of undertaking a job. Most contractors understand the risk of their job, but this aspect of labor contract needs to be spelled out in great details to protect the company and worker. And the last is signature. Once both parties have obtained and read over a labor contract, they must sign and date it to indicate they understand its term. Both parties obtain a copy and sign the deal before actual work begins. Once a labor contract is signed, it puts everything into motion. Those who veer from the agreement must be found in breach of the contract and subject to fines. So from now here, Arun will take over. Over to Arun. Arun.
Arun,
Hello.
you there?
Arun. I don't know why he's not responding.
Okay, Ayush, you can just give him a call and check whether he's on it.
Wait, I'll call him.
Yeah.
Ma'am is not picking up the call.
Okay, Ayush, what you can do is you can skip this part, you can go to the next person's part. Like, we'll give time for him to join.
Okay. Yeah. So from here, Ashwin will take over. Ashwin, over to you.
Oh,
Wait,
okay, thank you.
Arun, wait. Arun is here. I guess Arun is here. Arun.
Arun, you there?
Hello, ma'am. Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, you're audible.
Yes. Hello, guys. Please change the
Yeah.
slide.
Yeah, please continue.
Arun. Okay. Sorry for ma'am. There was a network problem, so I was not able
That's
to.
okay, that's okay. Not an issue. You can continue.
Hello everyone. My name is Arun. Now I am going to explain why should a client prefer a labor contract. There is a popular belief, particularly among the owners of the small and medium houses, that labor contract is always better and preferable on account of following. The first one is that owner satisfaction. Owners are always satisfied that they have used the material of their own choices. They can buy the material of good quality, good brand, etc. While the contractor may or may not do so, the owner has always a fear that contractors will use a cheap material of substandard brands and the poor quality. The second one is that whenever a owner goes for the material contract, the contractor adds some extra charges to make their profit, which is about 7 to 15% of materials cost. This increases the total cost of the house almost by 5 to 10% of the total. So the owner can save the extra charges on the material by buying the material on his own. Please change the slide, Ayush. Hello, Ayush.
Yeah, he changed it.
Okay. Okay. And now we will see the type of the labor contract. There are mainly four type of labor contract. First one is that item labor contract. In this type of the contract, owner or client pays the contributor contractor based upon the rate of the particular item of the work which the contractor executed or worked. For example, for concrete works, contractor charges let's suppose rupees 5,000 per cubic meter. With this rate of the charge, the contractor will complete the whole concrete work of the house. The second one is the lump sum labor contract. In this, there is an agreement in which the contractor agrees to complete the project for a predetermined set of the prices. The third one is area-based labor contract. This is the type of the contract in which the contractor are paid on the basis of the total area of the house which is going to be built. The fourth one is the percentage-based labor contract. The percentage-based labor contract is similar to the item rate contract in almost all the respect except the method of tendering the unit rate. Change the slide, please. Now we will see about the cost factor in the labor contract. The first one is the saving in cost due to the saving on profit on materials cost. We already know that the owner can save on the account of profit considered by the contractor on all material cost, but it is not always true, and sometimes it may prove costly too, as sometimes price of the material varies from place to place, but the owner don't get benefit due to the lack of knowledge. So due to price fluctuation, the owner may get affected, which is not in case of the contractor. The second one is no discount on bulk buying. Due to the lack of the knowledge and expertise, owner will not able to bargain and so he will never get the advantage of bulk buying or bulk discount, which the contractor generally gets. Next slide. So next topic is check on quality. The first one is the assurance of the quality of the material. As we already know that in the labor contract, all the material are bought by the owner of his own choices, so there will not be any quality defect. Quantity might be out of control. For example, in case of the bricks, the quantity may not be accurate. The rate may be cheaper, but the supplier may supply less quantity of the bricks for the same price. The second one is the quality of work. Suppose that any owner or a client get all the good quality of material supply, but if the contractor does not deploy skilled labor or engage the unskilled labor or insufficient number of the labor to avail the some profit, then overall quality of the work will be definitely suffer. Now I'm overing to the Ashwin. He will continue the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun. Let's see on time and effort spent by the owner of the contract. The owner must manage the timely supply of materials at the site during the progress of work. The construction of the house involves more than 100 different materials, and owner will have to spend a lot of time towards buying all materials. The work may get delayed if materials are not properly managed by the owner on time. Buying all materials also involves a lot of stages like the search of right supplier, right quality, negotiating the right price, delivery of materials at site, verifying the quantity and quality delivered at site, checking the bills of materials delivered, and ultimately payments and settling accounts. This is time consuming and demanding, not so easy as one may think. Next slide, please. Finance. The owner buys all materials for the construction, and hence he must manage and plan the fund from the beginning. The cash flow must be strong as materials must reach the site on time to avoid any delay. Next slide. Technical knowledge of materials. Mostly owner is not aware as how to check and judge the quality of materials. So he might get cheated. The owner might be cheated even in rates, though he purchased materials in bulk. You may be buying good brand, but still you would be in dark regarding its quality, for which you don't have any control or knowledge or expertise. The labor contractor is not that resourceful. Sometimes he might not be that skilled also, having the expertise and may not have adequate required resources. Now, Babita will continue the presentation.
I'm audible, ma'am?
Yes, you're audible.
Here I am go through the wastage of materials. Wastage of material, possibility of wastage of material on site. If the owner is not properly helped by the contractor, there is a possibility of wastage of materials on site. The contractor is not providing materials, hence he may also use materials carelessly. When the owner supplies the materials, the contractor always remain negligent for use of materials. For example, a contractor may cut the steel extravagantly, for he may not recollect the wastage of cement or mortar or sand for some other use. Next. Further, the owner may buy a truckload of sand and 10% sand remains unused. It will be difficult for the owner to sell it or use it in another place, while the contractor can use it at other sites. This will increase the cost of the owner. In some cases, contractor will not assume responsibility of damages or defects and can claim them on faulty material provided. Next. Project cost. Material cost is almost 60 to 70% of the house, and when owner give a material contractor, the contractor will add his profit on all material cost, which may be 7 to 15% increase. This will increase the cost of the house, approximate 5 to 10%. The owner can know final project cost only after completing the scope of work and by adding all material cost and labor cost. Next. Conclusion. Hence, Sometimes it may happen that owner may not get expected return benefit and spend much time for completing the work. The owner may spend much time and effort for saving a small amount on purchases of materials. Therefore, it is a value of time which matters the most. Thus, on the face of it, the owner seems to save on profit on materials by the contractor. In reality, it may or may not happen. Your ultimate cost may even increase due to all above reasons, over and above the loss due to the spending of time and energy by the owner. Next slide. If you have a lot of time and knowledge of construction and are willing to take care of the project every single day, then you choose a labor contract. And if you want to save time and money but have no knowledge of construction, then hire a project manager and go for a labor contract. The project manager will have a knowledge of construction. He will coordinate between vendors, manage material supply, and check the quality of construction. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you, Babita. Thank you, team. Can you go to the first slide so that I'll note down your roll numbers as well?
Yes, ma'am. Is it?
Yeah, okay. Okay, there was a change in your presentation order, right? So Arun is roll number 17, Ashwin is 18, Ayush is 19 and 21. Okay. First Ayush presented, followed by Arun, followed by Ashwin as well. Finally ended by Babita. Yes?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now your topic is contracts for labors. In this, what I felt is your time span was very small in this case. You could have put some real-time examples taken from some journals. You can browse through Science Direct. You'll be able to find out some contracts for labors and its issues. You can find them. You can take an abstract. You can sit and read the particular journal and what type of contract labor. Contracts that are being used in Indian scenario that you can search. You can take a particular abstract and you can include that into your slides. Like when you're circulating the slides to your friends, I wish you should add that particular literatures and then you can circulate. It will be more easy for them. So they can easily refer to it and they'll be having a clear idea of what is a contract that is allotted for labors. Okay.
Okay,
That
okay, ma'am.
is
We will do
all
that.
about it.
We
Otherwise,
will
you're
do
doing
that.
very good. Yeah,
Okay,
okay,
ma'am.
okay.
Thank you.
Finish.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And now is team 3 ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Is all set between among you people?
Yes.
Okay, so you can start your screen share.
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay, you take time. What is your topic?
Construction conditions, ma'am.
Okay, so you can start your screen share. Who's going to share your screen?
Myself, ma'am. 1 second. Yeah,
Okay.
almost there. Is it visible?
Yeah, it is visible.
Hello. Okay.
Yeah, it's visible.
Good evening, everyone. Here we're going to present, we are from Team 3, and here we're going to present on contract conditions in a construction.
Your voice is breaking. Just 1 second. Can you go to the previous slide? I'll note down your roll numbers. Are you going to present in the same order or?
Ma'am, the order is different.
Okay. Okay, then you can go. You can go on. I'll note down your names and then take your roll numbers.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. We are from team 3, and here we're going to present on contract conditions. Arvind, next. So we're going to discuss about the significance and terms, types of conditions of contract, details, breach of contract, and finally the general conditions in a construction contract with a suitable example. Next. So speaking about the significance, a business of any size runs on agreement with suppliers, with employees, with governments, and with the public. A contract is an agreement in which two or more parties agree to exchange money, goods, or services for another equally valuable thing. In a purchase contract, the agreement often involves money. In non-purchase contract, such as a non-compete agreement, the exchange can involve intangible things. Conditions define an event that binds the contractor to an obligation of performance. When reviewing a contract, whether on your own or with legal assistance, these conditions deserve utmost attention. Just as conditions can bind a contractor to an obligation of performance, they can also render a contract agreement invalid. Express conditions that do not use specific, definite terms to identify both the agreed to event and the timing of the event can free a contractor from legal responsibility in a breach of contract lawsuit. It is also important to understand that conditions can be implied and, although not laid down in writing, be as enforceable or unenforceable as express conditions. Next. So speaking about the different terms in a contract condition, starting with the contract for construction, the contract documents form the contract for construction. The contract represents the entire and integrated agreement between the parties hereto and supersedes prior negotiations, representations, or agreements, either written or oral. The contract may be amended or modified only by a modification. So if we talk about the contract documents, it consists of the agreement between owner and a contractor, conditions of the contract, drawings, specifications, addenda issued prior to the execution of the contract, advertisements or invitation to bid, instructions to bidders, other documents listed in the agreement, and modifications issued after the execution of the contract. In the event of conflicts among the contract documents, the specifications shall take precedence over the drawings, and the supplementary conditions shall take precedence over the general conditions. The contract documents shall not be constructed to create a contractual relationship of any kind between the owner and a subcontractor or even a subcontractor. So we discuss about the contractor. He is nothing but a person or an entity identified as such in the agreement and is referred throughout the contract document as if he's a single number. Unless otherwise stated that the contractor means the general contractor or the general contractor's authorized representative. So drawings. As we all know, it is a graphical or pictorial portions of the contract documents, wherever located and whenever issued, showing the design, location, and dimensions of the work, generally including plans, elevations, sections, details, schedules, and diagrams. And the designer. He is an architect or an engineer who is identified as such in the contract for construction and is referred throughout the contract documents as a singular in number. The term designer refers to the designer or the designer's authorized representative. The designer shall be entitled to performance and informants of obligations under the contract for construction intended to facilitate performance of the designer's duties. Arun, next. Modification. A modification is a written amendment to the contract signed by the parties, or a change order, or a construction change directive, or even a written order for a minor change in the work issued by the designer. Owner is none other than the person or entity who is identified as such in the agreement and is referred to throughout the contract documents as a singular in number. And the term owner means the owner or the owner's authorized representative, any of the both. And when you talk about the project, Arvind, next slide. So when we talk about the project, it is the total construction of which the work performed under the contract documents. And it may be the whole or a part, and which it may include construction by the owner or by the separate contractors. And if you go to the project manual, it is a volume which usually assembled for the work, which may include the bidding requirements, sample forms, condition of the contract, and specifications. And when we speak about the specifications, it is the portion of the contract documents consisting of the written requirements for materials, equipments, construction systems, standard and workmanship for the work, and performance of related services. And finally, when we discuss about work, it means the construction and service required by the contract documents, whether completed or partially completed, and includes all other labor, materials, equipments, and services provided or to be provided by the contractor to fulfill the contractor's obligations. The work may constitute the whole or just a part of the project. Now my friend Arvind will discuss about the different types in contract conditions.
Good evening, one and all present here. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, okay. My roll number is, my name is Arvind T, and my roll number is 103119015. And I'm here to talk about conditions of contract and the performance. So what is a condition? A condition is simply put, it is an event or act that basically affects a person's duty to render a promise that he has made in the contract. Let's say there are two persons, A and B, and A wants to let's say buy a house, and B is the one who's selling the house. So and A puts a condition here that if the house is damaged in by the time he buys it, he's not going to accept the contract. So that condition which it puts out is basically what we call as condition itself in contract. That's the definition of condition. And the conditions can be of three types, basically conditions precedent, conditions subsequent, and conditions concurrent. So we'll now deal with conditions precedent right now. So what happens in precedent is that the certain conditions of the contract have to be met by one party before the other is obligated to perform. Basically, so coming back to our same example between party A and party B, B has to fulfill some conditions like signing all the documents, required documents, and all that, and only then after that he is obliged. Hello.
You can proceed. You can proceed.
After that, only he is obliged to sign the contract. So conditions precedent is basically the conditions that you have to satisfy before you perform your duty or performance. And it's mostly common in wills and trust, as you can see. And then in the context of business contracts, condition precedents take the form of conditions that dictate handling of different activities. So as we know, like even if you let's say you want to sign a sponsorship deal with a company, so basically there will be a few contracts that you have to sign before you get them to sponsor. So that contracts or business documents that you sign before he sponsors you is what conditions precedent means. And some other examples include, let's say you purchase contracts note that the sale is contingent upon financing. The term contingent here means that it is dependent on, or it's more like it's conditioned upon. So if it happens, then yes. If it doesn't, then no. That's the meaning of contingent. So if you're purchasing a contract note that says the sale is contingent upon financing, then when the loan is approved, the buyer has to perform the duty of completing the purchase. And if he doesn't, there's breach of trust, there's breach of contract, and there's breach of promise as well. The next example is the asset of an estate might be held in trust with specific embossment only granted to the recipients at specific milestones. This can include graduating from different levels of schooling, having children on their own, or buying a home. This can be seen as subsidies for workers when they join a company, as you can understand. So we'll move to condition subsequent. It simply means is that if a specified condition arises after the obligation to perform starts, the performing party is released from the duty to do more. Basically, he doesn't have to comply to the terms of contract because the term is over. I mean, the time period is over, and the party that is obliged to perform a duty that he has signed up for doesn't need to do it now. And there's an example here. And let's say someone tries to rent a facility for performing or a meeting or anything, and he has run out of time period and he hasn't come yet. So the other person who's supposed to give the facility to the previous person is not obliged to give it to him right now, because it is not mentioned or contingent that the person who wanted to rent a facility can apply for extension of time period. There is no specific contingent mentioned in the contract. So that's basically condition subsequent. Condition subsequent is basically what happens after the contract is done. And the final part is the implied concurrent conditions of performance. It's a simple concept. Basically, both the parties have to accept some sort of agreement between both, or some promise, and they are obliged to fulfill both of each of their own promise at the same time. This happens in point of sale in your daily life. And yeah, so the majority of point of sales are based on implied concurrent performance condition. And coming to performance, so there are two types of performance in once a contract is signed: substantial and satisfactory. Substantial is when he fails to comply strictly with the terms of condition, he will not be denied the contract, and he can be recovered with the contract. Basically, you're saying that you don't have to stick to the the contract terms and conditions very strictly, and there is substantial performance that is enough to cover your contract or part of the deal. So that's what is substantial performance. Coming to satisfactory performance, the performance must be proved to be deficient in these respects, and the dissatisfaction must be proven to be sufficiently reasonable, and if it's well founded to justify non-enforcement of the contract. And if the performance is not satisfied on the basis of bad faith, then the person can recover from the contract. He doesn't need to worry about satisfying the other person who has signed the contract. He has done his part of the deal, and he doesn't need to worry about it. So the next slide will be, yeah, what's next slide?
Hello.
I can't hear you.
I'm audible clearly, and his screen is visible.
You're a little inaudible, dude.
Am I audible clearly?
Yeah, now you're clear.
Now okay.
Okay, so I'm Amit, roll number is 11, and I'm going to discuss about the topic importance of details on behalf of Aniket. So the prime purpose of creating a contract is related to the recording of details, which both parties have agreed upon with mutual consent. So in case of any conflict which may arise in the future, the details will come of use there. Their detailing will make clear whether there is any discrepancy between contract and what there is on ground. So it provides a precise knowledge of the services provided by the third party or the monetary expectations to be met by the person. Next, since it is agreed upon with mutual trust, it also contains the service and benefits provided by the contractor to the client and the monetary expectations of the contractor. So detailing in that limits to any possibility conflict arising due to the absence of clearance on the terms. So paying extra attention to the details of a contract also prevents the unintentional mistakes and misunderstanding among the involved parties in the contract. It is also important for validity considerations, like getting the conditions of a contract right is essential to make sure that the contract constitutes a valid agreement. Mistake due to the vague nature of contract condition may lead the contract to be invalid, like the very high prices of the materials, uh, it should be mentioned clearly in the contract about the materials to be used, about the grade and the quality to be used. If they are not decided, the cost may turn up to be very high, and this misunderstanding can cause a problem in the future. So these details must be mentioned clearly on the contract. So next, it provides the security also. A detailed contract in terms and conditions provide all kind of securities and specifies the responsibilities of the two parties clearly. Like example, in case of late payments, detailed provisions lead to proper handling of dispute. Like there will be proper details mentioned in the contract itself, what measures to be taken if the payments are not done on time. So those disputes can be resolved successfully if those details are mentioned in the contract. Otherwise it will be difficult, and the this matter of dispute will go up to the higher authorities, maybe to the legal things also. So it is advisable to be the contract be prepared and the details are taken care of. So detailing in the conditions of contract is a very must thing, so as to avoid any conflict if it arises. It becomes easy for the intervening body to decide the wrong party based on the details of the condition of the contract. Sometimes what happens is that there are some ambiguities due to the absence of the details in the contract. So it becomes difficult for the two parties itself to decide. Like it is difficult to decide for two parties who is doing the wrong thing or who is misinterpreting the the contract conditions. So if the details are mentioned correctly, or if the details are proper, it will be easier for them to decide. And otherwise the intervening third parties like the court or some legal functionary bodies have to involve in that, and that will make the matter so lengthy also, and it will cost them also. So it's advisable to have the contracts in detail. So this is it. This was about the importance of details. Now I am moving to my topic, the breach in the contract conditions. So before we dive into what breach of contract is, let's review what a construction contract actually is. Contract is an agreement between two or more parties to do something, usually in exchange for payment. Now on to breach of contract. A breach of contract occurs when a party fails to uphold one of their contractual obligations they were required to do and failed to do so. So breach of contract is it may be intentional or may not be intentional. So I'll be dealing with those topics in the coming slides. So we should also keep in mind that the breach of contract can occur even whether the contract is written or if it's just a verbal contract. One of the many flaws with using only verbal contract is that terms of the agreement are generally vague when the contracts are uh, verbal. So when using a written contract, it's easier to determine the duties of each party. Now moving on to the next thing, which is common causes for breach of contract in the construction industry. Yeah. Construction contracts can be long and contains intricate documents depending upon the size of the project. A well-drafted one will account for any possible occurrence that can happen on the project and outline how to deal with the situation. However, there are some common occurrences that can cause a construction contract to be breached. A few of them are like the defective performance, schedule and delay issues. Defective performance occur when sometimes the workmanship is under question, and that may lead to the breach of the contract condition relating to the quality control. Sometimes these breaches may affect the project majorly. It can be sorted out as soon as there is some possibility of improper workmanship so that material losses can be prevented. When there is schedule and delay issues comes, see, the construction is a process, lengthy process, and each trade is dependent on one before it. On top of that, if there are a lot of other factors in play, one of them is the weather, which is very difficult to trust upon. Falling behind schedule might not be ideal, but it might not be a breach either. Both the parties should be cooperative with each other upon that sometimes. The weather causes delay here and there. So the contractor should make the client sure that the time lost due to weather and other factors will be made up soon, and the completion time won't get affected. Next. So we have dealt with the common causes and what the breach of conduct is, contract is. So now we'll go on to potential remedies for the breach of contract. Once it is noticed that there is a breach of contract, we look for the remedies. So when a contract has been breached, a non-breaching party who has been injured may be entitled to certain legal remedies for damages by taking rescission or reformation path. Damages are probably the most common remedy for the breach of contract, and it's typically what most claimants have in mind when they sue over a breach of contract. Essentially, damages cost the money. The amount of monetary damages that will be due to the injured party will depend on the specific circumstances, and there are a number of different ways that the damages could be calculated. Damages for breach of contract come in the following forms. There may be compensatory damages, which are meant to compensate the aggrieved party for any actual damage or injuries that may have been incurred. Liquidated damages are those specified in the contract for certain breaches where damages may be hard to calculate. The second one is rescission. When rescission is used, it terminates the rights of the parties and the attempts to put everyone in the position that they were prior to entering into the agreement. Rescission is also a common remedy used for the breaches of contracts, and it doesn't require that the parties continue to work together. The third one is the reformation. Reformation is a sort of similar to rescission. It doesn't require one side to outright pay the other, and it doesn't force the parties to carry on as if nothing ever happened. Under reformation, the agreement is reformed, meaning that the agreement will be reinstated through the obligations, and though the obligations and the duties of the parties will be altered from the original contract. So these are the three ways to have a remedy for the in case there is a breach of contract. So how to claim the breach of a contract? Next. So once we know that there has been a breach of contract, we know the remedies also, but we have to claim for that also, right? So how to claim for the breach of contract? Not all the contract disputes mean there is a breach. However, for some disputes, filing a breach of contract case might be necessary. It's unfortunate, but it happens. So how to claim for that breach? Before getting too far ahead, we should check the contract. There may be a dispute resolution clause present in the mandates, alternate dispute resolution. So whenever there is a dispute, if we know that there may be some possible disputes in the future, the details of the condition of contract may come of use there. So before claiming the breach of contract, we should actually look for whether there is a breach or not. So going to the original contract condition, we can ascertain whether there was a breach of contract or not. In order to recover under a breach of contract claim, typically that means filing a lawsuit. Lawsuits are expensive and risky, and that's yet another reason to talk it out before a dispute gets this far. When the damages are on the lower end of the spectrum, taking the issue to small claims might like sometimes if we are claiming for the breach of contract, it is better to talk the matter between the both involved parties. It's not advisable to go to some law authorities because it becomes lengthy also, and at the same time the process becomes costly. So it should be talked upon. And responding to a breach of contract claim, so how to respond to a breach of contract will depend upon a number of factors. Like there's no single answer to this question, how should I respond to this breach? But again, it's all depends upon the specific situation. So there are two things. A breach of contract won't necessarily entitle one to stop work or walk off of the job. First, just because the contract was breached in some way does not entitle other side of the contract to simply walk away from the deal. There are a lot of things to consider, and quitting or trying to fire someone will often do more harm than good. So specifically, walking off a job could itself result in a breach of contract. So before deciding to take any action, we look to the contract, which are there to provide guidance in these sort of situations. Many agreements are set out specific methods to resolve disputes and respond to the issues. And second one is the talking it out with the best option available. Reaching out to the other side and trying to fix the issue is probably the most efficient and least risky option available. Even if one side is clearly at fault, and even it may take some negotiating to make the issue disappear, smoothing out the dispute with contractor, subcontractor, or the supplier will almost always cost less, and replacing them or fighting them in place of replacing them or fighting with them in the court. So this was all from my side. The next topic is general condition of in a construction contract. It will be taken by Apur. So over to Apur. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. This is Apur, roll number 14. So a construction contract typically includes the following things: the initial agreement, general conditions, drawings, specifications, and other documents. Now, I will be covering the general conditions. This section is the portion of the contract document in which the rights, responsibilities, and relationships of the parties involved are itemized. It defines each contracting party's duties and privileges and the rules that will govern the relationships. Next slide, please. Now we will look at some of the points that are there in the general conditions. So first is the role and work of the parties. So first and foremost, general conditions set out the basic duties and responsibilities of the parties. This section will identify the parties and their roles on the project, outline each party's rights and obligations to the project, and create notification requirements. However, it is different for contractors and project owners. For example, for contractors, you will find items such as a description of the work to be completed, bonds and insurance requirements, and warranties/guarantees. For project owners, this is different. This may hold their responsibilities regarding site conditions, change orders, and rejection of defective work. Now we move on to the next topic, time. So by time, most of you will gather that this provision details deadline. But other than deadline, this also deals with the date of commencement. So it can be that the commencement will start right after you sign the contract. But many contracts provide for a notice to proceed to be issued before the contractor can start work. It could also be helpful to define what constitutes substantial completion, and setting progress milestones can help clarify a major project's timeline. Now, delays and extensions should also be touched upon in this section. What happens when there is a delay, and what happens when there is an extension to the deadline? The next topic is price and payments. Price and payment provisions will determine the full contract price and how payments are structured. This is where the important questions that affect your bottom line are answered, such as the questions like, will there be progress payments or a lump sum final payment? How are progress payments scheduled? What is the payment application process? Will there be retainage? How is substantial completion defined for your work? So these are the questions which are imperative for both the working party and the contractor. So these are the questions that are handled in this section. Now, the next section is changes. Arvind, can you please change the slide? So changes, these provisions typically fall under one of these three categories. Now, Jayashree basically touched upon these three categories, and I will be explaining it further. So the first is change orders. Change orders are amendments to the contract. They are essentially a mini agreement to adjust the work, price, and schedule of the initial contract. When they are validly executed, change orders become a part of the original contract. But change orders also have the potential for creating chaos. Next is changes in directive. This can get risky if they are not limited by the general conditions of the contract. These provisions authorize the owner to unilaterally make changes to the work, with the price and schedule changes will be agreed upon later. The third one is minor changes. This is the third type of changes that may be allowable under contract. These are simple adjustments to the project that don't affect either the price of the time to complete performance. The next topic is suspension and termination. Now, one should pay close attention to this section of the contract. This will outline the circumstances where the contract might be suspended or terminated. These can include anything from the owner having funding issues to any delays the project might encounter.
Apur, sorry for the interruption. Can you make it a little faster?
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. I will try to make it short.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
So let's jump to the next topic, claims and disputes. So disagreements arise all the time on the construction projects. The contract should provide how these disagreements should be dealt with. Like, look for guidance on questions such as what are the types of notices are required when a disagreement arises? Are there time limits for any claims against the owner? And if there is a non-payment issue, should the contractor suspend his work or continue performance as to not get blinded behind schedule? To summarize, we can say that the contract is not something to be ignored. We can surely say that they can be tedious to go over, but these have an enormous impact on how the project will play out. If well drafted, the contract should provide a sound framework for the agreement and promote fairness among all contracting parties. That's all from our side. Thank you.
Okay. So you're done. May I know total number of slides you have used?
23, ma'am. 23.
23. But you all four of you have given so much of contents than your slides. So compared to all the three teams, your team has given out so much of contents which would be useful for the students. Like, though all the team has presented well, only one thing I just wanted to tell you is your background of the slide was in a very dark color, and the font color you have given is white. It would be good if you might have bolded all those contents. Few slides it was very less. I need to zoom in and see. People who are viewing in mobile, they can just zoom and see, whereas people viewing in laptop or desktop, they have to just sit and see the same screen. They'll not be able to zoom there. So only that thing I wanted to tell you. And I wanted to appreciate this team 3, where people have managed to do well at the last minute, where one of the team member didn't turn up at the time of presentation. So I need to congratulate you. All the 4 have, Amit, Jayashree, Arvindan and Apur. You all 4 did a very good work. This is called teamwork. A very good teamwork has been done by you. And I think for this, your title is construction conditions, where you have put all the
Contract conditions, ma'am.
Sorry.
Contract conditions, actually.
Sorry, contract conditions, where you have put all the different types of conditions that have been used during your construction works, and examples also have been given in a very nice manner. And your presentation is overall very good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So now I just wanted to tell you tomorrow. So team 2, 3, and 4 are done. Tomorrow, team 5 and 6 will be presenting. Is that okay? Tomorrow morning, 9:30 class. And Divya, you can just download the attendance and send me. Also, I wanted to remind you, by 5 p.m. itself, nearly like the total strength reached up to 92 or 93, and again by 5 p.m. people started leaving the meeting. Now only 65 of them are there in the meeting. Other 30 students, like around 28 to 30, they left the meeting. I don't want this to happen in the next class. So people who are staying here for a longer time, that is the entire session only, will be marked attendance. I don't want any one of them to leave the meeting. Unless there is a necessity, you can just drop me a message in the chat box, or you can just mail me the reason. Then you can leave the meeting. Unless otherwise, I want everyone to be present for the meeting. Do you think people are playing here? Just a few of them are presenting, and others just leaving the meeting. Is that fair? Anyway, all of you will be getting the turn to present. If this same happens to you, you will not be interested to present. So I don't want this to happen. I want all the team members to be, all the class strength to be here for all the seminars. If people are not attending in full strength, like, or people joining and leaving after some time, they also will be marked as absent. Okay, so Sias, you can put this message in your group. I want full attendance in tomorrow's class. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.